Lesson 46 is about percents, and part 1 is the percent concept. Go ahead and get your notes ready and push play when you're ready to begin. Oh, look, I got an 82% on this last test. That's great. I don't know. What does that even mean? What does 82% really mean? How do I know if that's good or bad? What does percent mean? Well, let's focus on the word percent so that we can figure out what percent means. And specifically this part that says cent. Think about it. How many cents are in a dollar? There's 100, right? How many years are in a century? 100, right? So what percent means is out of 100. And let's go ahead and put the word and this definition underneath it, out of 100. So if I got an 82% on that test, what it's saying is that I got 82 out of 100 questions correct. Let's look at this 100 box square to see if that's good or bad. If I got 82 out of 100 questions correct, let's see if that's good or bad. I'll color in. This is all 100. There's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 boxes. I will color in 82 of them. And when you look at it that way, you can see that most of the boxes are colored. Most of the questions were answered correctly. A few were incorrect. That's pretty good. That's okay. So that's a pretty good score on a test. 82%, 82 questions out of 100 is a good score. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, oh, Mrs. Sanchez, you do not give us 100 questions tests. And I know I don't, because those would take forever, and I would be bored sitting there watching you take a 100 question test. So, but I still give you your results back in percent. So why do I do that? Well, let's say I gave you a 10 question test and you've got 8 of those 10 questions correct. Well, what do I do to 10 to get it to 100? I would multiply it by 10 and it would give me 100. You know by now that whatever you do to the bottom, you best do to the top or you're going to mess up that fraction. So I'll do 10 here. And 8 times 10 is 80. This is the same thing as 80%, cent meaning 100, century, cents in a dollar, 100. So what I'd like for you to do is to get your brain trained to the fact that when you see this bar and 100, that is percent, 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 percent. So this is 80%, also known as 80%. So every test I give you, so that we have an idea for how much it was worth in comparison to tests of different amounts. Let's say we had a test that was 20 questions and you got 16 of those 20 questions correct. I transfer them into a percent so you and I both can understand how strong that is. If there were 100 questions, how many of those would you have gotten correct? So in this case, 20 to become 100 is times 5, and you would get 100. And 16 times 5 is 80, which would be, again, 80%. So we use percent to figure out how much something might be out of 100. This is a really useful thing if you have numbers that are out of balance. Let's say we were having a competition with our 6th grade team was having a competition with the 7th grade team for who could have the most kids coming to school each day. Well, the 6th grade team, the 6th grade class has about 70 kids in our whole class, in our whole grade. The 7th grade group has only about 40 kids in their whole group. So if we said, let's have a competition to see who could have the most kids show up for school each day, and we had 10 absences, so that only 60 kids show up, even if the 7th grade had all 40 kids show up, they still lost. That's not fair. They had every one of their kids show up, and we had 10 kids absent. So how do we fix that so that the competition is fair? Well, the best way to fix it is in using our knowledge of percent. You could say, well, we had 60 out of our 70 kids show up, and the 7th grade had 40 out of their 40 kids show up. So the way to even this out is, if we all had 100 kids, how many of those kids would have shown up? If you put it in percent format, how many of those kids would have shown up? And I did the math on this here already. I will be showing you in the next few lessons how to do that math. For now, I'm just getting you to understand what a percent is. For the 6th grade, that would have been somewhere close to 85%. If there were 100 kids, then 85 of them showed up. So 85% of our class, or 85%. I really want your brain to get familiar with the fact that this could be said as percent. Really get that stuck in your brain. And the 7th grade had 100%. So if this number had been 100, 100 kids showed up. So they ended up having more kids show up than we did percentage-wise. So it's a way to even the playing field, because it's not fair to compare numbers to numbers because we have more. So you need to even the playing field for competitions like that. Percent's a great way to do that. So there's 2 good understandings of what a percent is and why we might need to know percents. Percents for tax purposes is important. Here, let me explain that. So let's say that there is a family that makes $10,000 in a whole year, like the whole year goes by and they've earned $10,000 with their work. And another family that makes $80,000 for the whole year. They worked a whole year, they earned $80,000. And the tax season comes around. We're in tax season right now, so this makes good sense. Tax season comes around and they have to check to make sure they paid enough taxes. Would it be fair to say, well, you know what, just everybody pay $5,000 and it will all be good? Well, if this guy had to pay $5,000, then he has only $5,000 left in the year to feed his family, to put a roof over the head of his family, to pay for all the bills that come up, where this guy has $75,000 a year because he paid his $5,000 to the taxes. And that doesn't seem fair. I mean, he makes a lot more, and $5,000 is little to him. $5,000 is half this guy's income, and he's not going to be able to survive. So taxes are generally done on a percent sort of a basis. Let's say that, and this isn't an accurate number, but for what taxes come out, but let's say that the taxes say, well, everybody pay 10% of your income. Well, in that case, then this guy that's paying $10,000 will pay $1,000 in taxes instead. I'll teach you how to do that calculation later. Right now, I just want you to understand why we're using percents. So at the end, they will have $9,000 left. This guy over here, 10% of his income would be $8,000. So he ends up with $72,000 left. Yes, he has more money left. He earns more money, so he's going to have more money left. But when the taxes come around, this guy is paying $1,000. It's tough to afford, but he can afford that a whole lot better than the $5,000. This guy's paying $8,000. It's a little more than the $5,000 he was paying before, but he can afford to pay that a little bit more. So it's a little more fair. He still has $72,000 left, so it's a little more fair to go on percent than it is to say everybody pay this amount, because this amount might be way too much for this guy and might be okay for this guy. So you can't take all the money out of people's pockets that they're trying to earn a living for. So a percent sort of an idea is what happens with that, and it helps balance things out for everybody. Okay, and so for the purposes of this lesson, I wanted you to know what a percent means and why you'd use it. And I want you to know how to change a percent into a fraction in its simplest form. It's really easy, you'll see. And also how to change a percent into a decimal. So let's start by changing a percent into a fraction in its simplest form. And here's why I was saying that I wanted you to look at that over 100 as percent. So if I wanted to change 32% into a fraction, I'm just going to say 32%, but write it in the other way I mentioned earlier in this lesson, like this, 32% out of 100, right? 32%, 32%. Same thing. They're exactly the same thing. That's the fraction. Now I just need to do it in simplest form. Simplest form just means reduce it. So I'm going to reduce this fraction. Well, I notice that this is an even number and this is an even number. So 2 goes into both of those numbers evenly. 2 goes into 32 16 times, and 2 goes into 100 50 times. Also, 2 even numbers. 2 goes into both of them. 2, when you divide by 2, it cuts things in half, exactly in half. So 2 goes into 16 8 times, and 2 goes into 50 25 times. And that's as far as I can reduce that number. So the fraction form of 32% is 8/25. These are exactly the same amount. And that is how you change a percent into a fraction. You take this 32%, rewrite it as 32%, and reduce it like you already know how to do. Easy, right? So that's one of the things I'm expecting you to be able to do today. Change it to a fraction and reduce it. So change a percent to a fraction in simplest form means put it over 100, reduce. All right, then changing a percent to a decimal seems like it would be a little more difficult, and it starts off looking that way, but once I show you the shortcut, it will be the easiest thing that you do. So if, and I'm going to write in blue, and I don't want you to copy this part down, I want you to watch this part. If I take 62% and write it as a fraction, 62%. Changing a fraction to a decimal, you know by now, means divide the bottom into the top. 100 into 62. And it won't go in, and it won't go in, and then it will go 6 times, and lifesaver, and it will go 2 times. And I get 0.62. 0.62, right? Doesn't that look familiar? Except this is 62 point. Here's the shortcut. When you're dividing by 10, you're really just moving a decimal over one spot because there's 1 0. If you divide by 100, there's got to be the 1 there. 100, it moves over 2 spots because there's 2 zeros. If you divide by 1,000, the decimal divides over 3 spots because there's 3 zeros there. Well, percent is always, always, always going to be 100. That's what percent means. It means out of 100. So you're always just moving that decimal 2 spots and 2 spots only to the left. You don't even have to do the division. 62% is 0.62. Move that decimal that you can't see here because it's hiding in the shadows. 2 spots and 2 spots only to the left because I'm dividing by 100 because it's 62 out of 100. What if it's 66.3%? Write this one down actually because this one is on your closure. 66.3%. Well, it's going to be 66.3 over 100 because that's what 66.3% means. If I wanted a decimal, I would divide bottom into top. I'm dividing by 100. So I'm going to move my decimal 2 spots and 2 spots only to the left. And I'm going to get 0.663. That's it. Percent's now a decimal. Done. Just move it 2 spots and 2 spots only. What if it was 125%? 2 spots and 2 spots only to the left because I'm dividing by 100, only 2 zeros there. So I move that decimal 2 spots, it is 1.25. 0.5. That is the answer. I know you're thinking that's way too easy to be correct, but it's right. That's easy, right? 2 spots and 2 spots only because we're dividing by 100. So changing a percent to a decimal, move it 2 spots and 2 spots only. 62% is 0.62. 66.3% is 0.663. 125% is 1.25. That's it. Change a percent to a decimal. Easy, huh? So now you know what a percent is, what it's used for, and why. How to change it to a fraction in simplest form, and how to change it to a decimal. Go ahead and grab that closure and see how you do. And if you need more help, go ahead and pull the lesson back up to look at those examples and see if it helps you. And if that doesn't work, see me about it. I'll help you through.